Hi, my name is Chandy Napier, and today we're going to talk about why habitats matter. I used to look at open land and think, why aren't there shops here, or restaurants, or buildings? I thought that I was a city girl who never questioned the space that we took up. Never did I consider what that land meant for the birds, the deer, other wildlife that called it home. Now that I'm older, I see it differently. I realize how vital land and nature are. It's not just empty space waiting to be turned into an eighth McDonald's within a 1 mile radius, it's actually home for wildlife. And according to the World Wildlife Fund, or the WWF, wildlife populations have dropped by 73% since the 1970s. Why? Because we keep tearing down their habitats for things that we don't need. And if we don't act now, we're not just going to lose the animals, but we can lose ecosystems that make our life possible. So let's talk about why habitats matter, how we're destroying them, and what we can do to fix it. Wildlife goes deeper than just cute little animals. They're actually essential to our ecosystem. In fact, the International Fund for Animal Welfare, or IFAW, calls them ecosystem engineers, which I like, and they call them that because every species plays a role. Like those pesky little bees or butterflies, those are pollinators, and they keep our food system running by helping our crops grow. Even elephants have a role. They trample plants to clear space. For new growth, they spread seed through their feces, and they actually help keep our forests healthy. Well, why does that matter? Because forests absorb carbon and release oxygen and keep our air clean and regulate our climate. In fact, the IFAW reports that forests absorb 1/4 of all human carbon emissions each year. Nature depends on balance, so everything from wetlands and forests and oceans are all important because they store carbon, they regulate our climate, and they purify our water. So whenever we continue to clear out land for development, we're not just pushing wildlife out, we're actually making floods worse, we're increasing pollution, and we're throwing ecosystems out of whack. So like I said, every species plays a role, and whenever one disappears, it can disrupt their entire system. So the World Wildlife reports that 85% of endangered species are actually at risk because their habitats keep getting destroyed. And if we continue down this path, we're going to reach a point where nature can't recover and neither can we. People also assume that climate change is the reason for wildlife loss, and that is not true. According to this chart by WWF published on Statista, it's actually habitat loss caused by us. That green is climate change and the blue is habitat loss. So animals need space to live, survive, mate, hunt, migrate, all the things. But as we continue to expand, we don't just take up their space, we actually cut it up into smaller, isolated areas, and that's called habitat fragmentation. Homes go up, roads connect, and then fences divide, and then all of a sudden, wildlife is just backed into a corner with nowhere to go. And this is something that I never thought about before, but whenever we interfere with their habitats and we don't offer any solutions, we're actually making their survival a lot harder. It reduces their hunting grounds, it disrupts their migration, and Baines from Animal Charity Evaluators actually says that it forces inbreeding, which weakens their species. Deforestation is another culprit for habitat loss, and we continue to wipe out forests for logging and agriculture and development. And the WWF actually says that half of the world's original forests have disappeared. And even worse, they're still being removed at a rate 10 times faster than they can regrow. Obviously, that's a problem because nature needs time to recover. Normally, ecosystems go through a natural cycle of growth, die off, and then regrowth. But the National Wildlife Federation, or NWF, says that too much destruction at once means that nature does not get a chance to bounce back. And it's not just land loss, it's actually what we leave behind, like pollution from industrialization, agriculture, and human waste. All of that goes into rivers and lakes and oceans, and they poison the environments which wildlife depend on. Well, you would think, well, that just affects the fish. That's not true at all. It actually disrupts the entire food chain. The NWF explains pollutants build inside those animals and plants, and then whenever those predators eat them, those toxins concentrate in their systems, which weakens their populations, it causes diseases, and it can even wipe out entire species. So what do? We can't undo the damage, but we can reconnect what's broken and protect what's left. One of these ways is through wildlife corridors, which helps wildlife travel between those fragmented areas to help them with survival and migration. The NWF is working on a wildlife crossing at Liberty Canyon in California. This is actually what it's supposed to look like when done in 2026, and it is supposed to help the mountain lions and other animals cross the highway safely, and it'll be the largest wildlife bridge in the entire world. So right now, National Geographic says that we only have 15% of land and 7% of oceans protected. And experts say we need at least 50% for nature to fully recover. Luckily, protected areas work. SAO from Earthly shows studies from national parks, wildlife reserves, and marine sanctuaries can actually increase mammal species by 44% and bird populations by 31%. So the more that we preserve and expand protections, the better chance wildlife have to survive and the more that we keep our ecosystems in check. We as individuals can also help make a difference. We can create wildlife friendly spaces like migration stations in our backyard to help birds and animals. Like simple things like feeders or roosting boxes or pollinator gardens, all of that's beneficial. And the NWF recommends gardens be at least 70% native plants because they can support twice as much wildlife than non-native plants. And it might not seem like much, but with over 2 million habitat acres being lost a year, we're actually giving them a fighting chance. So now that we understand why wildlife is vital to our ecosystem and how our actions interfere with their habitats and ultimately their survival, we still have time to fix it. By coming together and creating safe spaces for wildlife and being mindful of how we develop land, we can help protect their homes because at the end of the day, nature doesn't really need us, but we need nature. Thank you.